Hey everyone, this is Jeff Norris, the 2024 Alabama Teacher of the Year. I'm on a mission to amplify education in the state of Alabama and celebrate the power of specific teaching strategies and initiatives. As I travel around the state, visit teachers' classrooms, and meet new people with innovative ideas, I want to share these moments with you so we can all celebrate and grow better together. Education is my passion, and I want you to realize and embrace the opportunities we have to change lives each and every day. This is the power of a moment. All right. Hey, everybody. This is episode 6 of the Power of a Moment podcast with Jeff Norris. I say it every time I record a podcast is that this one's going to be the best podcast yet. I just keep getting people who are rock stars who just get me fired up, and I sincerely hope they do the exact same thing for you. So today is no different. We're going to talk about the power of growing today with just one of the best people in the entire world. Look, I'm saving the suspense. I'm not even pulling her up yet because I want it to be such a surprise. She is like the rock star, I think at least, of education in Alabama, and really just the epitome of continuous growth. And so I love that we're going to talk about the power of growing today. And I'm excited to introduce you to this is Suzanne Culbreth, the one and only Suzanne Culbreth. I know our listeners have heard your name or seen your face or seen your name somewhere because it feels like, Suzanne, that you're like just like you like everything. And I think I know this enough about you. We both like to put our touch on lots of different things. Everything's exciting to me. I don't know if you feel the same way, but it is, right?
Absolutely. And you're way too kind, Jeff, but it's great to be here. And I'm excited to share and be a part of your podcast. And it's been so great to get to know you through Alabama Teacher of the Year and all the great things that you've already done for this state. And the best is even more yet to come.
Well, my vote is we just keep complimenting each other back and forth for the next like 30, 45 minutes. How do you feel about that? That sounds good, right?
Yeah.
So Suzanne, for those of you who may not know, Suzanne really is like y'all, she is like legitimately a rock star, an award-winning educator, but also like she just lives it out. I love people who don't just have accolades but live it out. So she was Alabama's Teacher of the Year of 2019 something.
13. Well,
Say 2013.
I'm lucky 13.
All right. She was also a Milken educator, which really is like the rock star of rock stars. It's like pull out the red carpet. You think of that, it's the Milken Education Award. And so, I mean, really like to put for people in the know, if you know, you know, those two awards kind of combined together mean something. You actually do like the platform you have, Suzanne, like is enormous, and you didn't sit on it. You didn't just sit on your laurels. Like you continued even after that, and that's what I love most is like you continue to have a voice and an influence. And so I do think the power of growing is just such a testament. I love that you chose that word, and I think our listeners can learn a whole lot. I know I can from your influence. So I'm excited about that.
Well, great.
Anything else I forgot about that? What is like the one thing I left out? Because I mentioned the two awards, which are like heavy hitters, but I'm sure like look, mother, grandmother, aunt. I know you've got all kinds of relatives. Like what am I leaving out? What things am I leaving out of your description?
Let's see. Well, now, yeah, my husband sometimes refers to me as the Triple Crown, which I'm not sure if I want to be compared with horses, but and it's something I'm very proud of as well is the Presidential Award for Excellence in Math and Science Teaching. And I think the reason I'm most proud of it, Milken is a huge surprise. Teacher of the Year, you fill out the application and you do interviews and you talk to people. But for the Presidential Award, I was actually nominated in the late 90s and I was a state finalist twice. And kind of put it on the back burner. And I had a principal and when I was at Spain Park, say, Suzanne, what's your goal? What's your big mountain you want to take this year? And I said, well, I'd really like to try one more time for the presidential. And so she nominated me and I did the application process from scratch all over again and was privileged in 2011 to be named the presidential awardee for Alabama in math.
Yeah.
And that I think because of the trying and the not yets, it even feels more like an accomplishment, because of that, and then the waiting over the years and trying one more time.
Yeah, I love that. And we'll probably get to that at some point in this episode as well. That kind of sticking with it, that growth mindset. I love that you're living that out.
Absolutely.
And then the other thing we didn't mention that we have in common is national board certification. So and probably speaks to growth more than any of those other things too. So we're
Absolutely.
both absolutely like on fire for national board certification and for continuing to make that a priority in Alabama. And
Yes.
I love that. I see your name attached to that all the time. And when people ask, I'm like, talk to Suzanne about that. You know, she continues. But again, like you have, I hate to say you put your hands in all these pots, but like legitimately, like you believe in these things. It's not just I want to have my hand in all these different situations. It's like this changed my life. This has the
Absolutely.
possibility to change your life. So I want to continue to invest in that, and it's worth your time and your energy. And I respect that so much. So I'm excited to talk with you about some of those things. So all right. So when I talk to people who are going to be on the show, I just say, hey, pick a word. Like, what is something that means to you? Means something to you? And you said growing. Let's talk about growth. Let's just kind of dig into that. And so we're going to talk, just to kind of give everybody a heads up. We're going to talk about growth for educators, and maybe as adults or teachers or leaders, and then maybe speak a little bit to student growth and how we do that in the classroom. I want to hit both of those things if we can, but just start us off and like talk about why did you choose? Like, how did that word just like pop up and say, oh, growth? Like that's what I want to do. You know, what are you thinking?
Well, one of the questions you asked me was, my story and my background, and as I think through, even from, as they say in Sound of Music, begin at the very beginning,
Yeah,
from my time at
it's
Auburn.
a very
It
good place
was
to start.
it was a very good place to start. It was all about growth and growing. I graduated in '82 at 20 years old, and moved to Texas and taught both biology and math at a school that I'd only ever met the superintendent. So you talk about a growth year.
Yeah.
That was, I think I felt like I was thrown into the deep end of the pool.
Mhm.
But then, throughout my entire career, whether it was, at Homewood, when I was in two departments, and really growing, and dreaming, and having great administrators there, and getting started in Alabama, or when I was at Opelika and they first invented the internet. And we were on the cutting edge of technology. We got bloody sometimes, but we were right there on the cutting edge, and going to the technology conferences and doing those kinds of things. And then my career came back around to Birmingham and Oak Mountain and Spain Park, and that's where I became nationally board certified. And I guess, probably to back up just a little bit, Homewood was where I first began to realize and to see how important the things that I learned in science ed about inquiry, and applying those to math, and
Mhm.
having those kids do hands-on discovery things, and being able to, I was a memorizer, I will confess,
Mhm.
and never really understood the why. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about students in mathematics knowing the why, knowing the
Mhm.
where it came from, and then being able to, at Oak Mountain and Spain Park, getting that national board certification, and really focusing in on my pedagogy, and being able to apply all of those things that I had learned and grown to the classroom, and then also sharing those with other folks.
Yeah.
And toward the end of my career as an instructional coach at Mountain Brook Junior, and as a UAB teach instructor, getting students excited about the possibility of being teachers,
Mhm.
and those that were teachers growing. And I think that's why I chose growth,
Mhm.
because as a teacher, we never arrive. I don't care
Right.
what accolades you get, there's never the perfect lesson. You never reach every student. You can always get better. You can always improve. And just that idea of improving and seeking out ways. And why do we need to improve? Suzanne, how did you teach geometry for almost 20 years?
And not learn how to teach geometry. It took you 20 years.
Did you do the same thing over and over again? No.
Yeah.
There was never a day that was the same because, and at the end of the day, I had a box on my plan book or whatever, method we were using that said, evaluation. And it wasn't evaluating the students. It was my self-evaluation. What can I do better? How, this took longer. This didn't take as long. Had this idea second period after it didn't go well first period. Yeah. What can we do to improve and make it better? And always seeking those things out. And our students change. And, you see a lot in social media about changing for the worse, but I think there are a lot of times they're changing for the better. Right. They come in with a set of knowledge. I think about what a challenge it was when I first began doing hands-on discovery. My struggling kids they loved it. It was great. I was letting them do something besides a worksheet and answer questions and copy things off the board. They thought it was great. But my more advanced students, it was really, really difficult for them. They didn't have that growth mindset. They had sat in rows and been very successful. They had memorized things, and they would say, "Miss Culbreth, just give us the formula, and we'll do 100 of them exactly right." But that's not the point. Right. The point is to be able to know why and to be able to grow and discover. And because technology's changed, students have changed. My pedagogy changed, the last day I was in the classroom to the first day, you wouldn't think I was the same person because it was very, very different because I found better and new ways to teach things. And the research changes, telling how the brain works and the things we need to do. And we need to include, our kinesthetic and our auditory and all those different things that we need to include beyond just being that sage on the stage.
When a lot of people and teachers are the best and the worst, I say sometimes, like we are the worst. Like we promote this growth. We're going to talk about kids in a second too, promoting a growth mindset in kids. And we have a hard time living that out. So a lot of teachers, like you ask them to self critique or give some feedback, or like, God forbid somebody say, "Hey, we're coming to observe in your classroom tomorrow." And you're like, "What? Like, you cannot come, like close the door and lock it," And I think that we forget that like that's all a part of growing. Like we have to be open to that. And I think that I think my camera just went dead, so I'm going to keep talking and I'm going to fix this camera real quick. There we go. So I think we have to think about how important this growth mindset is for teachers and getting feedback from kids and from each other. And it sounds like, yeah, sorry, keep going.
Okay, now I was going to say, I just agree with you 100% in that. Yeah. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about the national board process is you become that idea of being a reflective practitioner. Number one, I heard somebody say, I have a practice. Who knew? I thought only doctors and lawyers had practices, but we as teachers have a practice that we are, and by the word practice, that suggests in and of itself that we're constantly growing and getting better, and being a reflective practitioner where we reflect on our practice. And if my lesson on parallel lines isn't hitting all of my students, but the teachers next door is, why do we not collaborate and work together? When, I think about the early 80s when I began teaching, we were on an island. It was an individual profession. We closed our door and no one evaluated us. If we all came out alive, it was a good day. Yeah. So it has meant so much to me to be able to have that input and not only to reflect personally, but have that input, have my door open, say, "Hey, Jeff, come watch. Let's talk about it. What did you see?" And I think something occurred with a intern one time. He I was doing a lesson and we were sitting down and having, reflecting on that lesson. And one of the things that this intern said was, Suzanne, wherever you went in the classroom, you had everything you needed. When you were at the podium, reviewing, talking about the homework, you had your teacher's edition. When you were at the document camera doing the folding the triangles activity with patty paper, you had your models there. When you were in the back of the room with your PowerPoint, you had your slate. And it never occurred to me. That was something that just intuitively I did, but that was something that he noticed. Right. So we've got to understand that things don't always come as naturally to everybody, and that might not be exactly what he needed to do, but we also need to think of that in terms of our students. Our students, and something one of the biggest lessons I learned in professional development is not just to model it, but then stop, take a time out and talk about it. Yeah. Did you notice I did this? Did you notice, why do you think I did this? Why do you think we did this? And so that teachers can hone their skills by seeing that and also noticing the rationale of why. And once again, the national board process does that as well.
Right.
All about not what you do, but why you do it.
I love that. That's so good. Shameless plug, episode, now I think it's episode 4 with Kevin Pughley, who was the alternate teacher of the year in the state and one of our mutual friends. He has a whole presentation on feedback. It's the power of feedback. And so it's just interesting how
getting feedback together from students.
His is primarily getting feedback from students. Yes. So I think it's neat how, it all ties together. And I think that does speak to growth. I think a lot of these things really tie together for sure. And that mindset of sharing the struggle with students really is so powerful. And I think that it builds trust, it builds transparency, like all those things, builds classroom community. Like when you open yourself up in that way, I think it allows your voice to be amplified. It allows your kids to have a voice in things. And so there's just so much power in that. Like I completely agree with you. I think that's one thing I've read or heard the other day was about way learning occurs or sticks. And it's exactly what you just mentioned. Like we didn't even talk about this, like talking and reflecting are like the 2 ways for the most learning to occur. I'm sure the person who said it much more eloquently than that, but that's what I took away from it was our kids. And this kind of can lead us into talking about growing with students. Like the more they can talk and the more they can reflect. And I would say teachers the same way too. Like the more we can talk about what we're doing and what we learned, and the more we can actually reflect on it, the more we'll grow, or the more that will continue to happen. So I think that that's so powerful.
I think, one of my favorite things, and I've done some presentations on this, the person that's doing the talking is the person that's doing the learning. Yeah. And probably
I knew somebody could say it better. That's exactly right.
If you talk to one of my former students, they would probably say I did a lot of talking in the class, but that whole idea of, let's turn and talk about this. Let's get up and we see all of those strategies in, the new art and science of teaching. And to be honest, I think math teachers, we may be the worst.
Yeah.
I'm the purveyor of all knowledge. No. We need to get our students to step through to get to that point. And then they need to be able to share it with others, to talk, to be able to, just look at another student's work and say, oh, well, I made that mistake. And that idea, one of my colleagues at UAB teach, she had an elementary background, but was working with folks that were going to be future middle school and high school teachers. And she said, she was just a master at number talks. I put
I love it. I love that. Yeah, me too.
And the idea, her rules in her classroom was you had to be willing to justify your thinking. share and justify your thinking. You had to listen when other students were sharing theirs, and then you had to be willing to discuss it. So being willing to say, hey, I disagree, and here's what I think. Oh, well, I'm going to revise my thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And if we could produce students that became citizens that could listen to both sides and revise their thinking, or defend and justify their thinking, what amazing citizens would we have? Even don't tell anybody, but even if they couldn't remember Pythagorean theorem,
Yeah.
they could justify their thinking and listen to others and revise their thinking. I would say I'd done a good job.
I literally just put a Facebook post out there. I have these 6 keys to success in my classroom that I've like kind of followed me over the years, and there are things that I feel like I need to do as well as my students. And the one today, there's 6 posters. Today was like number 5, I think, and it was. I'm looking at it right here above my board. It says, "Keep asking until you really understand," and it says sometimes it takes more courage to ask for help than to act alone. And I was saying, it's like risk taking is a life skill, and it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard, and math is a clear example. I've taught you and I both have been around the block a couple of times. So like I've had English background, elementary background, and now math, and it's interesting to see like it's very apparent in math. I think even more so in some of the others that students like we're not cultivating that mindset. Like they really are. Peter Liljedahl writes this book called Building Thinking Classrooms. I don't know if you've read it or seen information about it, but he talks a lot about students being mimickers and not thinkers. And in math, it is so clear cut that students really they have the capability of doing it. They don't feel open, I guess, is the way. Like you
Mm-hmm.
have to create that culture, that environment. And so that was the point of the Facebook post was like, how do we create a culture of learning, a culture of growth in our classrooms? And that's kind of where I would love to kind of pick your brain. Like, can you think of ways, like you kind of mentioned, getting kids to these discussion protocols where the thinking structures, where they really turn and talk and think, pair, share, and some of those buzzwords we hear, but like those are really effective ways to get kids to create this culture of growth and culture of thinking where we have mutual learning, and there's that piece.
And I think we as teachers have to be the model.
Right.
And we have to be willing to say, I messed up. Okay,
Mhm.
who sees my mistake here? Who can help me fix this?
I love that.
There's no way this is going to work. We have to model that growth mindset. We have to model that, oh, they're adding statistics to geometry. I've got to go learn statistics because
Yeah.
I've had educational statistics, but in terms of the kinds of things that are there. And I also think it begins early. It begins very, very early. I saw a huge difference. I talked earlier about how sometimes my high flyers struggled with the
Mhm.
hands-on things.
Mhm.
But over the years, as Amsty came into the middle school where I was teaching, and those students had been in groups, had done things, they hadn't been isolated, they had been talking about math, then slowly but surely that began to allow me to not have that frustration level. That was something they were used to.
You're used
And
to.
I think high school teachers and middle school teachers can learn a lot from our elementary colleagues in that they're doing the number talks. They're doing all these things that are the math practices that are teaching students how to persevere. They're teaching students all these things. We can't just have a dead end in 6th grade and then in 7th grade, all of a sudden
Right.
start math the old way again.
Yep.
We've got to take that foundation that our elementary teacher friends have built for us and build on that, because think of where we could go from there. So I think we need to build on that. I think we need to challenge, part of growth is not just focusing necessarily on excellence. We've got to take the kids where, they are and challenge them at every level, whether they're a struggler or whether they're, that kid that makes 100 on every test.
Right.
What can we do to challenge them to go to the next level and then celebrate success? Hey, you got it. And when we see that frustration, not trying to avoid the shutdown, Yeah, I see your
Mhm.
yet there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't do it. I can't do it. Yes, you can. You just
Yeah.
haven't got it yet.
Yeah.
So it's our responsibility to say, all right, you didn't get it when I presented it this way. Let's think about what's another way we can think about this.
Mhm.
What's another method that we could come to this same success?
Yeah. We're not giving up.
We're not, no, no, no,
Not
absolutely
giving
not.
up.
And for some students, it takes some one-on-one.
It
Hey,
does.
come back and let's look at this, just the two of us. Or for others, to me, I've taught kids that have gone on to Harvard and been chemical engineers and are changing the world in
Mhm.
technology. But the one kid that I think grew more in my class was somebody that came in from another school district and didn't have quite the background of the other students in my
Mhm.
class. And she was with me every day before school and after school. And we really did Algebra 1 and geometry in that year. She grew
I
leaps
love
and
that.
bounds.
Yeah.
And, it may not have shown up on a report card, but that's okay.
Yeah.
She grew in her mathematical knowledge and she was ready for Algebra 2
Mhm.
because
And
of the
and she probably
time and the energy that she put in to, okay, I, I understand this piece of it, but how did you do this? And we would just
Mhm.
go back, and sometimes it just takes that time, and sometimes it just takes, and sometimes another student can say something
Right.
that will click that maybe a teacher hasn't looked at it from that
Mhm.
perspective.
God, there's so much to unpack there. Yeah, that's all good stuff. I think, and same. I was thinking. I mean, exactly when you were talking about that student. Like I had that one student last year. Um, Behavior issues in other classes. She couldn't get along with other students. She had trouble building relationships with people. That carried over into the classroom. Carried over into her grades. She was somewhat capable. I mean, she really was capable of making pretty good grades. And we sat down at the end of the second 9 weeks at Christmas, and I just pulled her aside and I said, "Are you happy with where you are? Like, how do you feel about this? Like, do you think
Mhm,
this is a representative of what you know in math?" And she was like, "No, it was a she had a D, like a low D, I think, almost
mhm,
failing." And I said, what, like, let's set a goal. Like, what do you think now? Where would you say you are in your math knowledge? And she was like, an A. And I was like, all right, so so let's set some goals. How are we going to get
mhm,
there? If you think and I'm not even saying you have to get there. Like, we want to get closer to that than where you are right now. So what are we going to do? And we set she did. She came during PE. I mean, literally, and it took, I think some of the pieces you were talking about was that goes to this piece is that the relationship that you have with your kids, and we know this as teachers and we hear it, but it's the truth, is that the relationship is the foundation. Because we spent this PE time, she would rather have come to my class and done math than had free time during her PE class, and she was willing to do that because we had developed this rapport where she was willing to do it. Like, she
mhm,
wanted to achieve that. We set a goal and she worked at it and she worked at it. And again, we celebrated exactly what you said.
mhm,
And it is one of those moments where, like, you just want to, like, bottle that up or, like, take a picture. Like, don't you want like a Polaroid camera, like, right here all the time? Like, I just want to capture that picture of
mhm,
that moment. And it's why we do what we do as
mhm.
teachers. If you could just bottle that emotion and let everybody experience it, it's
And I spent over 30 years in the classroom, day to day, 150 or more students every single year. And I never, ever met one student that enjoyed failing
yeah,
or
yeah,
wanted to fail.
yeah.
And so that whole idea of, meeting them where they are and
Mhm.
helping them and seeing what that internal motivation is for them. I remember, and talking about growth and that positive, encouraging
Mhm.
attitude. I remember back when we first, one of the new things was learning styles, and
Mhm.
are you global, are you analytic? I had a counselor, and she was as far on the global end of the scale as I was on the analytic end.
Uh-huh.
She had a button that said I'm touchy feely, and I had one that said I'm not.
That's
So
amazing.
I always struggled for a long time thinking, because I'm so analytic, do my students know I care about them?
Mm. Mhm.
And then I came to the realization that the way that I show I care about them is I walk into class prepared every day.
Mm.
I walk in, I have my agenda on the board. They know we're doing, this activity, bell ringers are over there, and, everything's in, whatever class. If you're purple, it's in purple over there. And
Mhm.
and there's that structure, but there's also that I'm prepared. I
Mhm.
have found the best activity that I can find to try to teach you this. I have graded or read your exit slips from the day before, and I know this was confusing, and we're going to talk about it and get
Mhm.
everybody so that they understand it before we move on. All of those different things are the way you're showing that you care about your students.
All right.
One time I was doing something, probably cutting out circles or something, at midnight, and my husband said, "Oh, stop, it's time to go to bed." I said,
Mhm.
"No, tomorrow's, we got to have this for tomorrow. It's got to be the best day ever. Every day can't be the best day ever. Yes, it can.
Mhm.
That's my goal, for every day to be the best day ever."
Yeah.
And if you go into it with that idea, y'all, you're going to love this.
Mhm.
These trig ratios are the neatest thing you've ever seen in your whole
Mhm.
life. And then you start seeing those aha moments. And if you love it and you think it's great, I think that positivity and that optimism, and never say, one year I was doing geometry 11 and 12, and had the kiddos had algebra 1 over 2 years. They did not consider themselves very good at math. I had the little engine that could on the shelf. And when we always say, okay, do we need to read the little engine that could?
Mhm.
Because, you can, if you think you can. And that,
Yeah.
I think that positive attitude, that optimism can make a
I
huge, huge
I have
difference.
a dad hat in my closet. I need to go grab it. It's like a fishing hat with all the lures that hang down and stuff, and it's just similar to that. I'm like, it's time for a dad hat conversation, y'all. Like, we need to sit down and have a dad conversation.
Mhm.
Well, so speaking of optimism, this it brought up. I have um, y- being out in the public arena, because you are, and like social media, and like that's a heavy presence. And I'm sure you see this as well. Like, what we get hit with is that. Like, there's a lot of negativity. There's a lot of COVID has killed education. There's a lot of like nobody will stick with it. Everybody wants assistance. Nobody's being resilient anymore. There's this That's kind of the new buzz, is like, how do we create resilient thinkers, which I agree with to a certain extent, but I hear a lot of the negative side of this, and so that learned helplessness. So like kids are, especially again kind of in math, that's your background too. So like we hear that a lot. They're just going to wait for someone to come and save them, or come in and dig them up and pull them up out of the pit or whatever. Well, I saw something that kind of talking about the opposite of that the other day. It's called learned optimism. And like I love positive affirmations, and John Gordon's one of my favorite authors. He's a great author. And I don't know if it was his book, but he talked about learned optimism, this author did, and how it may have been in one of Marzano's books, but it was like a learned optimism is not this like poly positive. It's not saying everything's going to be perfect. It's exactly what you said. It's like seeing from where you are and building up from there. And when
Mhm.
you look at that and you say, look at how I grew, I've got this growth mindset now, this optimistic future. I believe in what I can create in the future because I've done it before. I have
Mhm.
success. I had to scrape by, like some of our two examples did. Our kids had to scrape by to get there. But now I can look back and say, you know what, my effort paid off. And so
Mhm.
now my outlook is not it's gonna be perfect, but it's like I'm willing to put in the grit and the effort and the with itness. And so I don't think it's a student issue. I don't know if you feel the same way. Like I do think when somebody asks me that, they say, COVID killer, this thing about how we're no longer resilient thinkers. I'm like, you know what? Let's apply this to the world right now. Like this is like my classroom is like a microcosm of society. So like,
Mhm.
if you tell me that, I'm telling you, what are we doing about it in society right now? Because we are in this culture of immediacy and immediate feedback, and like there is that piece for sure. So I don't know. Like I just think that there's power. I'm not somebody like I do put quotes. You can see all over my wall. Like the power of we've already had like the power of words as a podcast. Like I believe in these words, but
Mhm.
there is something about a teacher or a mentor or a coach who just like them believing in you and saying, "Let's set a goal.
Hmm.
and let's
Hmm.
move. Like, I'm here for you. I'm not going to save you. We're going to do it together. There's so much power in that. Like, that's
Well,
amazing.
and I think that success breeds
Oh,
success.
that's so good. Yeah.
Once you be able, and I think about my journey and going back to learning stats.
Yeah.
I didn't know a whisker from a box, but as I began to learn and see how cool it was and all the really neat things that you can gain from that, and
Mhm.
working with the other stats, AP stats teachers, and how this was preparing our students, and even seeing, how many jobs and careers deal
Mm.
more with stats than calculus,
Mhm.
that gave me the motivation to say, okay, this is something that's important, and this is something that we need to, I need to be excited about, and I need to learn. And once I began, I started with the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, 6th grade through 8th grade book
Mhm.
of standards and of foundations, and then worked my way through there. So I think that idea, if you can ever, find that one thing that student is doing well and build on that,
Mhm.
or something that they're naturally successful at. I think about, those um, high flying math kids that, were also in the engineering academy. Hey, we've got this project where we're making platonic solids. Why don't you take yours one more level and do it in CAD?
Yep.
Or, we're doing these line designs. All right, why don't I work with the art teacher? Or, I was at the art festival and saw all the great things you're doing in art. Why don't you demonstrate this for some of the other students and what you did to make this great? So if you can ever find that interest, that skill that a student has, and apply it, hey, we've got to learn all of these characteristics about how parallelograms, um, different characteristics that they
Mhm.
have and don't have, whether it is a rectangle or a square or not. You're in music, write a song, teach
Yeah.
us all that song, and let us all help learn it.
Do
So,
you think, I don't know if I can even phrase this the right way. Maybe this is not even a real question, but I'm going to say it anyway. So, do you think people or kids, I guess we can just focus on students, are intrinsically motivated? Like, is that something that's hard to get kids to latch on to, or do you think it's innate? Maybe innate's a better word. Like, is that an innate characteristic that people want to grow, or do you think it's something that you have to have somebody behind you kind of pushing you to do it? What do you think about that? I don't
I
know.
don't know. That's a good question. I think it's a little bit of personality,
Okay.
because I think about my grandkids.
Yeah.
I had one that, he's like 4 and will say, Mama Susie, what's 8 times 4? 8 times 2 is 16. What's
Oh,
8 times?
look.
I'm going, whoa. But if you ask him to, he wants
Mm,
to know he can be successful before he can do anything.
yeah.
He was very, it took him a long time to begin to do his balance bike, because
Yep.
he was so afraid he was going to fail.
Mm,
So I think part of it's personality, but I
yeah.
also think, and so that would be more intrinsic or innate.
Mhm.
Some people are, they want a challenge. Don't give
Mhm.
me that 100-piece puzzle. Give me the 1,000-piece puzzle.
All right.
But then but I think it's part of, for everyone, for us as teachers, to help them see all of the opportunities that success in the classroom will bring to them.
Mhm.
Just, don't say, well, I'm not a math person. Well,
Right.
you are, and you
Mhm.
can be,
Mhm.
and everybody can do math.
Right.
It's just, I think, and I'm hoping the way we teach is helping more and more people see that they can,
Yeah.
and where it's not just the ones that can, that it comes innately to, but the
Mhm.
ones that, and I'm learning every single day more and more number sense that I never knew.
Mhm.
And I practice it all the time. Okay, let's see, 58. Well, that's close to 60. So I'm going to, because, in my mind, when I had to divide 5,242 by 18, I would use the algorithm. Okay, well,
Mhm.
the one, and so I was so frustrated, I would just weep because it
Mhm.
took me forever to do one problem.
Mhm.
Whereas and I guess maybe my teachers taught it and I missed it, but that idea of, is there a different way to do this besides long division?
Just
What
that
is it?
question. I like
Yeah.
that question. Well, and I'm wondering, yeah, just you saying that makes me think, like, sometimes that's all it takes.
Hmm.
Like, so maybe there is an innate kind of a that's it maybe more hidden in some kids or something,
Yes,
but
yes,
sometimes really, like, I do think kids, like, the best source of engagement, I tell teachers all the time, it's not behavioral engagement, it's like cognitive engagement. If
hmm
you can get kids onto a task or a problem or, like, a question, like, I do think the majority of kids, the vast majority like that, they want to I think as humans, we want to problem solve maybe that's the piece. So if you can pull that angle, maybe
and
that's one way you can do it.
beautiful example of that was those kiddos I was talking about earlier that had algebra 1 over 2 years and
Mhm,
walked in with a very negative mindset about math.
mhm.
We just by chance, divine intervention, the Discovering Geometry textbook had come across my desk, and I thought this is what these kiddos need. The principal allowed me to get a class set, and I had to implement it with some things. But the very first chapter, chapter 0, was geometric art. And
Mm,
so we were doing all kinds of mosaics and Islamic art and line designs. And then the next chapter was reasoning. And those students just flourished
mhm.
because it wasn't, here's how you do it, now y'all go to 50 of them. It
Yep.
was, oh, we've got 5 people in a room and we got to
Mhm,
figure out who's the doctor. It was logic puzzles, it was what's the next in a series, and they could look at it lots of different ways, and it made a huge
mhm,
difference in those students. When we then took the step into postulates and theorems
mhm,
and all those things, they had that, oh yeah, we can do math.
mhm. I see
And
that a lot. We do, when I talk to groups, like, I love you know me, like, I love a classroom transformation and a theme, and, like, even if you don't go that route, like, gaming is
mhm,
this you hear it, it's a trend, and, like, I get that, but the thought behind gaming is not a trend. So, like, what I love about gaming for kids is they're willing to take risks, they are willing to fail as a verb, fail over and over and over again because
mhm,
they know they're not a failure. Like against that optimism, they're going to succeed. By golly, they're going to do that. If it's a video game, they're going to redo that
mhm,
level 200 times until they beat it, and they're willing to do that. But like on a kind of a micro level in a classroom, even if it's chess or checkers or whatever, like my kids are, if they can work a math problem and then make a move, work a problem, make a move, is what I tell them all the time. Like we do all kinds of tasks like that, and it
mhm,
adds this sense of it's not it is competition to a certain extent, but it is like this sense of I'm leading somewhere. So like
mhm,
I have a purpose for doing it. And I think that's why gaming works for kids. It's because it's a mindset shift. Like it is this like
mhm.
I have this goal in mind and I'm going to work to achieve it. And so I think it's and maybe it's because it's out of body, like gaming works for kids because it's not their lives they're playing
And,
with, but
we as teachers, I think, have to get away from that goal being a grade.
right. Oh,
The
that's really
goal
important.
is not the grade, the
Yeah.
goal is the learning,
Yeah.
and the
That's a
and
conversation for another day. We're
oh,
gonna
yes, yes. But the whole idea, if I can really learn these foundations
Yep.
of geometry and algebra, then, you know, calculus can take me into all
Yes.
kinds of things, or stats can take me in. These just open up opportunities
Mm,
for students, and that idea of the problem solving.
yeah.
If
Or
we
the
can
why.
teach
You mentioned the
students
why
how to break
earlier.
down a problem and solve it, that's life.
Yep.
Every single day we have
Yep.
problems that we have to break down and solve.
I used to have on my board, it has like the learning, we have to have our learning targets on our boards. Go figure. But I would always have like underneath the learning targets, but why? And you mentioned that
Mm,
earlier too. So like asking that question, like, why are we doing this? Why is this important? And I do think, again, like pushing kids to set a goal, like this gives that push for that. Like,
mhm,
this is why this is important. This is why I'm teaching. Like, yeah, because nobody's
mhm,
going to do differential statistics. That's
mhm.
not a real thing. I'm making stuff up, but like, no, you're not going to use that the rest of your life always. But you will use problem solving. You will use following processes. You will use convergent and divergent thinking. Both. Like, you'll do all of those things. And this class is teaching your brain how to make
Mhm,
connections and dig deeper and struggle and all those things. And yeah, like if we can do that, like success breeds, like you said, like that
mhm,
learned optimism, that future is going to happen. I love that.
mhm.
One more thing, and then I'll let you share some last thoughts too. So I was thinking, I always tell people, like, if you want to see rock star teaching and learning, go to a kindergarten classroom. And like,
Yes.
like we can both appreciate it because we do some upper grades, and I've been an administrator for elementary, and it's my favorite thing to do is to go visit kindergarten classrooms and then to walk away like 20 minutes later. I love to visit, and then I love to say goodbye and see you later and give them hugs. But the thing about kindergarten teachers that I think everybody can benefit from is this sense of modeling and like the
Mhm,
teacher talk and the self talk. And like you've mentioned all of these things. And I think it's so successful for like your grandchildren that are 4 and 5 years old,
mhm,
because like that's how you learn. Like you
mhm,
grow because you see somebody else who lived that, and
mhm,
and you put procedures in place to make it happen in the classroom. So like kindergarten teachers are the best at this. They have a procedure for everything. Hey, when we turn and talk, I want you to, the first person is going to start with this question,
mhm,
this stem, and then you're going to respond with this, and you fill in the blank and keep going. And to have your peanut butter partner and your jelly partner, and turn to talk to the other person, and then we're going to set the timer for 2 minutes, and when you finish, give me a thumbs up, and like all that kind of stuff. And then the other piece that I love about kindergartners is they are not afraid of anything. By golly, like there's so much research about creativity, and I think 5 years is like 5 year olds are like the most the peak of creativity, and then it goes downhill after that because the risk taking piece, like it gets removed, and so people
mhm,
are not willing to be as creative as they once were. And I think there's just so much power in that. And I do love that, like you mentioned earlier, I think some of that we're learning from our elementary counterparts is making its
mhm,
way up, because good teaching and good like learning and those things are good for every grade level. So
mhm.
anyway, that's my piece about that. I had to put my plug in for my kindergarten teachers too. Look, go observe a kindergarten classroom. That's what I tell people. Okay, so last thoughts. Give me something good. Like what is
Well,
something we haven't mentioned yet? I just want to sit and listen and learn from you.
well, you asked me about a quote, and there's a gazillion of them. But one thing that I came across during my Teacher of the Year was John Lewis, civil rights activist, talked a lot about pilot lights. But when he died, someone wrote a essay, and the title of the essay was "Be a Pilot Light, Not a Firecracker." And I love that idea, both as a teacher in a classroom, as a teacher working with colleagues, as a professor working with future teachers. Am I being a pilot light? Am I that light that's there that they can come and ignite from and go on and burn brightly elsewhere? And for students, are we being that pilot light? Are they seeing us grow? Are they seeing our light and wanting to be a part of that? Not just a big bang and
Mhm.
and, and
Yeah,
noise and firecracker, and then it's over.
yeah,
But do we have that longevity? Do we have that time and the energy?
yeah. I
And
love that.
uh,
Nothing like this. Look, you
I
remember these
know
days,
you
don't
gotta
you?
wait for it. But when I think about growth, I think we not only have to grow as teachers, but we have to challenge others to grow. I remember the very first technology conference I presented at. I was a co-presenter. I think they only asked me to go so I could do the hand trucks with the CPU. But she turned to me and she said, "Suzanne, what are you going to present next year?"
Yeah.
And so that challenge for others
Mm.
to grow, and not just, hey, what are you going to do? But how can I facilitate with
I love that.
and what can I do to facilitate that? Whether it's, right now I'm currently working with the East Alabama Regional In-Service Center with National Board 2Bs,
Oh yeah.
or our mentoring folks, or going into classrooms, or even just covering a class and giving someone else a chance to go do a PD, or go visit somebody else's classroom. All of those things are things we can do to facilitate growth. And the thing that I ended every presentation that I made as Teacher of the Year with was Colossians 3:23, that says, "Whatever you do, do it with all your heart." And just, I guess, my challenge in the area of growth, to do that with all your heart, or teaching, or whatever it is that you're doing, just to have that passion of doing it with your whole heart.
That's awesome. Look, there's no reason to continue. That's the perfect way to end this episode as well. So, look, don't you miss this bell ringing? This is amazing.
I do. It kept me on track for 35
awesome.
years.
I've enjoyed this so much. Like, you have no idea. And I tell people I feel really selfish that I get to do this. I wish every teacher had the opportunity that we both have had, to go around and visit and learn from people. And
I
my
learned
hope
so
is that
much.
yeah, my hope is that this, like, maybe this podcast is something that people need to hear this, and they need to hear from you. And since we can't, like, replicate you in every single location at all times, although you try, and we try to get you everywhere, this is a way that we can really, get your voice out there to talk to people, because I think this is definitely something that we need to continue to hear. I love so many things that you say, and I can't wait to, like, watch it back myself and write some of these things down. So
I appreciate the opportunity, and just keep growing.
Yay, awesome. Well, we will talk to each other again soon, and thank you so much for being on here.
All right, bye.
See you later.